And welcome to the show. This is Delpy Does the Gilmore Girls. I'm Randy Delp, and this is my wife.
I'm Nikki Delp.
And so the idea behind this show is we're just going to watch the Gilmore Girls and talk about it. Gilmore Girls premiered October 5th, 2000, whole 18 years ago, and it launched many careers. The idea behind this show that I'm doing now is that I wanted to sit and spend some time with my wife, and she wanted to watch the Gilmore Girls for the fourth time. Is that right?
Yeah, don't judge me.
So I was like, yeah, I can watch these. I could probably watch all of them. And Nikki's like, no way. There's no way you can watch this show all the way through. I was like, you know what? We're gonna do it. We're gonna do this podcast. We're gonna crank through it. If you hear the labored breathing, that's not me. That's my dog, Charlotte. She's a gargoyle. So you might hear her from time to time. And so there's 153 episodes of the Gilmore Girls. And we made it through the first episode. And I'm not sure how many of these shows we're going to do. This is the first one, obviously. I don't know if I'm going to do, watch 2 episodes, 3 episodes. Do an episode for every 153 episodes. I don't know. We'll see what happens. How many episodes do you think I'm going to be able to make it through?
I'm gonna give you 2 seasons.
2 seasons. Well, the other night you said 6 episodes. Then you said 1 whole season.
You seem really determined. I'm gonna give you 2 seasons.
I did take copious notes for the first season here. My sister Abby, who's also an avid Gilmore Girls fan, said 32 episodes. You think that's the over/under?
Yeah, I'll give that the over/under.
Okay, so let's start out. Season 1, Episode 1. We watched the pilot. Jumped in there, and right off the bat, there she goes. You know that song? Remember that song?
I know the song.
Oh, you know that song. It's in every 90s movie whenever they want to say, look at this chick, isn't she cool? Isn't she hot? And so there's hot-ass Lauren Graham begging for coffee. The best coffee cup in Stars Hollow, Connecticut. Population, how many white people do you think are in Stars Hollow?
Probably a couple thousand white people.
Couple thousand white people. Probably what? Middle, upper class, mostly?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay.
I think it's supposed to be a suburb of Hartford.
Suburb of Hartford. Because weren't there 2 guys we're going to Hartford, it's a half hour away, we've never been, isn't that cool?
Yeah, something like that.
Alright, so here's Lauren Graham, and she is Lorelai Gilmore. That's our, would you say she's our main protagonist?
I would say that Lorelai and Rory are co-protagonists.
Co-protagonists. Okay. So she gets her coffee from Luke, and they sit down, and these guys are, this guy's trying to hit on her, and she shuts it down, because, that's what good MILFs do. And here comes Rory. Rory comes in. 16-year-old, sweet Rory Gilmore. And what's your first impression of Rory?
I've always loved Rory, even when she's kind of a shithead. My teenage self really connected with her because we were very similar, bookish, shy, overly thinky. But the main difference is that she's gorgeous and everyone loves her, and I was a nerd.
So she's not so much... She is a nerd, but she was hot.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I think that being hot causes you to overcome a lot of downfalls.
You think the being pretty, your life's a lot easier?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Okay. So Rory gets her coffee too, and here comes the guy back, and Mama Gilmore runs him off, and then they giggle. I'm pretty sure there was I'm keeping track of the 90s references. So the first song, There She Goes, that was from the 90s. There was a RuPaul reference in there somewhere. They mentioned Macy Gray CD, which comes into play later. I think everybody's heard the Macy Gray song that they play there. And then, so you told me that I have to watch the opening music, listen to the opening music, and the end music. And
Every episode, that's a rule. Yeah.
Why is that a rule?
Because the opening song especially is very, very important, and it's part of the experience. And when you watched it on TV, back then you couldn't fast forward through it because TiVo wasn't a thing yet. DVRs weren't a thing yet. It's part of the experience.
And we're watching this on Netflix.
Yeah.
So.
You
And you know the song, "Where You Lead, I Will Follow."
That's the one.
That's one. I always get it mixed up with "Thank You for Being a Friend." You know, the Golden Girls.
Oh, hey, I'd never really thought of that before.
And then it made me think, like, maybe we could, like, branch off on this podcast and watch other girl-related shows. Like, I looked them up. Like, we could watch Gossip Girl and do a podcast for each one. The show Girls on HBO. Golden Girls, of course. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think we can get through all those girl shows?
Yeah, I've seen every episode of New Girl, and I've seen, I think, every episode of Golden Girls.
I forgot about New Girl, and I really enjoyed New Girl.
But I've never seen Gossip Girl and don't really have any interest in it, so we would probably both be in the same boat with that one.
Ooh, we're going to skip that one, maybe. That's my other dog, Beans. Chill out. So, so here's the next scene. And it's a shot of the inn. My first thought is, where's Lorelai Gilmore get all the money to run this inn? And then you told me that she's not actually owning it, she just runs the inn.
Right. The owner comes into play a little later. It's an older lady.
Okay. So she's running the show. Lorelai Gilmore's hotshot running this inn. And then we get introduced to the only black guy in town, Michel, who happens also to be French. And I didn't know this right off the bat, but he's also gay. So gay, French, black, nailing all the stereotypes right there with one character.
Right, but to be fair, they didn't make it official that he was gay until the reboot series on Netflix. He mentions he has a husband in that series, but the original cable series, it never addresses his sexuality.
Do they show the husband in the Netflix?
No, he just mentions him.
Just mentions him. Does he say what his name is at all? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
I have to ask my sister
I
Abby.
only watched that series once.
So we see Alex Borstein, and learned the other day that she was going to be Sookie, Melissa McCarthy's character. Alex Borstein, she plays the harp there in the beginning. She's
Drella.
Is that what her name is?
Yes.
I didn't even notice
Drella.
that. Shows you how well my notes I was keeping there. So Drella, she's kind of a bitch, playing her harp, and I don't know. I think the show would have been really, really different if she would have been Sookie.
Yeah, but I think Melissa McCarthy is just too adorable. Like, it's hard to put anybody up against her.
So I guess at the time, like Alex Borstein, she's famous for being in Family Guy. She's Lois in Family Guy. And then she's the agent in the new show that we really enjoyed, also by Amy Sherman Palladino, on Amazon Prime, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So what did you think of that? Her role in that compared to her role as the harp player?
Well, Drella's a really minor character. She just kind of pops up from time to time, and then I think later the same actress plays somebody else.
So she's a totally different character later on.
A totally different character later on. It's more of a bit part. Whereas in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, she's a really important character, a really dynamic character, and I would say a much more interesting character. I think that this shows more of her acting chops than Drella or really anything else I've seen her in.
Even Lois?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I didn't even realize she was Lois.
You didn't even realize that?
No.
Iconic voice there. So I figured out that... so Sookie, played by Melissa McCarthy, was going to be played by Alex Borstein, but apparently she was too busy and famous to play this full-time back then. I'm not sure what the story is on that, but... so here we are at the busiest inn in Connecticut. Lorelai's running it. What was the name of it? The name of the inn?
Independence Inn.
Independence Inn, because Connecticut. So I wrote down here because I remembered there's a BBW porn star. You know what BBW stands for?
Big, beautiful woman.
There you go. So there's a porn star named Lorelai Gilmore.
Of course there
which
is.
I think it's...
That's the dog.
That's my dog being super excited about the BBW's porn star. And,
she's a pug. She's bad at breathing.
So we go to the next scene, and we've got Rory and her token Asian friend, because Rory's super inclusive, somehow, even growing up in white bread Connecticut. I didn't even pick up on what this Asian girl's name is. She's super Asian.
Lane Kim is her name.
Lane Kim, and they're talking about going to the hayride, which comes into play later. There's a little joke about that. She's going to marry this doctor guy. Do you think that works out?
I know what happens.
I know what happens too. I've seen the future. So while they're walking by, there's old Jared Padalecki, Sam Winchester himself. But Sam Winchester from Supernatural, okay, all the way back in the day, was playing this character named Dean. What's his last name? And do you know?
I don't remember.
Oh shit! So Dean is played by Jared Padalecki, who is Sam Winchester in Supernatural, and his brother in Supernatural is named Dean Winchester. So, I don't know, it's kind of a mindfuck on that one.
You did seem a bit
Jared,
thrown off.
so Jared is really grown up. Obviously, this being 18 years later, he's all chiseled, good looks, and he's really baby faced and fresh looking. How old do you think he was then?
I would guess 18 or 19, maybe. I would guess he was less than 20. I could be wrong.
So there he is, scoping old Rory out, old hot to trot Rory. So then we get a cut to what Rory's life is like in the school. What's the name of the shitty high school there? Do you know?
I think it's Stars Hollow High.
Just Stars Hollow High. And so we get a shot here of the cool mean girls not paying any attention, not doing their homework. They're doing something with their fingernails. Rory just doesn't fit in with this group. And we see old Penny from The Big Bang Theory sitting there.
I'm almost sure it's her.
It is. I looked it up. Kaylee Cuoco from The Big Bang is one of the mean girls. And they're all talking about her, how mean girls do in high school. Oh, look at this bitch doing her homework. What a dumbass. Oh, loser. And she's just plugging away.
Not letting the haters get her down.
Not letting the haters get her down. So we cut forward to another scene of the end, and we get our introduction of Melissa McCarthy as Sookie. Melissa McCarthy is America's sweetheart, and you say this bitch is so clumsy.
That's really the only character trait she has at the beginning. Yeah.
She's just so fucking clumsy, dropping everything, burning herself. Lots of gags there.
And they kind of dropped that later. Like, I don't remember it being a thing much after the first episode, but...
So you think that was just, like, introducing her for the pilot? Like, oh, we need some slapstick humor for the...
Yeah, maybe that's what it was, and then when they realized that she was such a good actress, they increased her role, gave her a little more depth. But really, at this point, she's a very flat character.
So you said she's a really good actress. Do you really believe that?
I do.
Okay.
I've always really liked Melissa McCarthy. I really like the Sookie character. There are definitely characters in this show I'm not a fan of, including Rory sometimes. But
Rory is a little bitch.
Oh, don't. But I do like Melissa McCarthy, and I do like Sookie.
I would say Melissa McCarthy. I'm going to say some stuff that might be controversial, but I would say she's the female Will Ferrell right now.
I like it.
Like, Will Ferrell is a superstar, comedic actor. I would say she's right up there with him. Like, she's the female version of Will Ferrell. I'm going to say it. I don't care. So, flipping page 2 of my copious notes. I wrote down catty Koreans. Do you know why I did that?
Probably Mrs. Kim.
Mrs. Kim, because she's catty.
She is super catty.
Because she's talking shit on Rory.
And I honestly spent the entire series thinking that Lane's father was dead. I've watched it multiple times and thought that Lane's father was dead. And then in the Netflix reboot series, he's alive. So apparently he's just so unimportant.
They never mentioned him, or did
they mentioned him in passing in the first episode, but I missed it or tuned it out or forgot or something. But yeah, they actually show him for a split second in the reboot. I was like, what?
So, do you know who was it? Like Kim Jong from The Hangover? Was that her dad?
No, I have no idea who it was. Oh. Just an elderly Asian man.
Gotcha. So, I wrote down here, do you think Melissa McCarthy, like when she was doing this, I'm asking you this because in another scene, her and Lorelai were talking to each other about Rory, well, like, what are they going to do to pay for this expensive school? And it just made me think, like, do you think back then Melissa McCarthy was dreaming ahead for her future of being like this movie star? Or do you think she was grounded? What do you think she was like back then in this role? Do you think she was just glad to be there? Or do you think like she looked at this as a stepping stone?
It's an interesting question. I think that probably any actor or actress that's relatively unknown is going to be happy to get steady work on a TV show.
Just to get a paycheck.
Well, not only that, but it was at least at first a very good, successful television show. I feel like most of them were probably happy to be there.
So, we saw how shitty the school was for Rory. And apparently, was this Rory's idea to go to Chilton, or was this Lorelai's just like put her in there? Like, I'm going to put the application in? How did that work out?
Well, Rory's like life goal at this point is to go to Harvard. And I think that they knew that getting her into a better school would be a better way to accomplish that. So I think it was a mutual decision to apply. Rory definitely knew what Lorelai was talking about when Lorelai said she got into Chilton.
Right.
So it's not like she was completely in the dark.
I missed that. See, I wasn't paying attention at that point. I just remember her opening the letter, and she's like, oh, she got in, yay, and then they're both happy.
Yeah, I think it was probably a mutual decision.
So then there's the whole idea of it's so expensive. Like, what'd she say? It was like $5,000 just to...
She doesn't say, but she says there's a lot of zeros.
A lot of zeros. So how is Lorelai, who didn't go to college herself, right?
Right.
She's
taking night classes in business at this point.
Now, how old was she when she had Rory?
She was 16, either when she got pregnant or when she had her. I'm not sure which.
Okay, so...
But they mentioned that she was 16.
She got this job at this inn she's running now, right?
Right, and
so
she started as a maid. Her mom mentions that later.
Worked her way up. Doesn't really have any money. She's a single mother raising Rory. So what's she gonna do? Well, come to find out, she's got rich white bread parents.
The richest, whitest parents.
Richest, whitest parents in Connecticut. What's the mom's name?
Emily Gilmore.
And then it's Richard Gilmore. Old Dick Gilmore.
Let's stick with Richard. I feel like
I'm calling him Old Dick.
I hate that.
He's going to be Old Dick the entire span of this, however long this podcast lasts. It's going to be Old Dick Gilmore.
I'm not a fan.
Well, it's my show, so we're going to call him Old Dick. So, Lorelai goes over to rich person's house, Emily's house, Old Dick, and there's a lot of tension there. You wouldn't say she's around her parents that often.
I would say that she actively avoids them.
Actively avoids her parents. I mean, who doesn't do that? And then you get to meet Emily, who I call half-ass Susan Sarandon.
Oh, come on.
Like, I don't know if I've seen her in anything else, but like, you know when you see somebody, like, imagine Susan Sarandon, but then like imagine her, like, cousin who's been put in a microwave.
Oh my God.
And then that's Emily Gilmore's actress. I don't know what her name is.
That's a terrible thing to say.
Well, that's how I felt about it.
She's a good actress.
She's fine. 7 out of 10.
Oh.
And then here comes Papa Gilmore. Okay, so this is Old Dick Richard Gilmore. Ed Herman, God rest his soul. He was actually, did you know he was the head vampire in The Lost Boys?
I know that now because you made me watch The Lost Boys.
Because I made you watch The Lost Boys. And so there's this running gag, and I guess you said this comes to play later.
In the last, or the second to the last episode of the reboot series, when Lorelai goes to Emily for money to expand the inn, Emily and she have this conversation.
Spoiler alert.
Where Emily repeatedly says, you need money.
You need money. He says it 3 times. You need money. You need money.
Right. It's basically word for word exactly the same conversation as the first episode.
So a nice little callback and maybe a nod to Ed Herman there, since he'd passed away between the last episode and the filming of the reboot.
Well, I think one of the ongoing themes of Gilmore Girls is that everything kind of comes full circle. And it was a nice way of drawing attention to that.
Well, it's almost like, I wouldn't say they're a mirror, but the similarities between Lorelai's life and Rory's life, and how Lorelai's trying to make it different for her, but they're living the same kind of battle. Does that make sense?
To some extent, yeah. There's a line in the first episode, the very first episode, where Lorelai even says, "You are me." And Rory says, "No, I'm not you." But you do get important similarities, I think. And we'll talk more about that later.
Gotcha. So Lorelai asks for the money, and then Emily's gonna go ahead and give them the money to let Rory get into Chilton, investing in her grandchild's future, because that's what you should do. But there's strings attached. Every Friday night, Rory and Lorelai have to go over to Old Dick and Emily's house for dinner.
Yes.
And yeah, so like, do they do that every episode? I guess I'll find out.
They find a lot, yeah. I mean, there are certainly episodes where they don't, but a lot. The relationship between Lorelai and her parents, and then the relationship that develops between Rory and her grandparents, all of that is, an important dynamic on the show.
So the next scene is showing Dean, Sam Winchester, stalking old sweet Rory, sorry, Rory, stalking old Rory, doing his opposition research, if you will, stalking her, checking her out, and he goes up to her and starts talking to her about school and Moby Dick. There's a Moby Dick reference in there.
Yeah, she's reading. She says it's her first Melville.
Yeah. Is there other Melville? I don't know.
There is other Melville.
Does it all suck?
Yeah, most of it.
All right.
Bartleby the Scrivener is kind of interesting.
So Rory realizes that old Dean's into it. Like, he's sniffing around, and she's like, "Well, I like this guy too because he's tall and handsome." And
which is really, all that she knows about him at that point.
And she knows that he's into it, and he knew the trick of going through her heart, which is that book. Trick. Come on, guys, that's a tip there. Talk about the book she reads, and you'll get Rory or whatever girl you want. That's my dog freaking out. Charlotte. So Rory's being a little bitch about going to Grandma's for dinner. I wrote, "I hate Rory."
Oh, no.
Yeah, so she's being a little bitch about it. It's like, bitch, you want to go to Chilton? Because Mom can only throw out so many $20 hand jobs to pay.
You stop it.
To pay for Chilton. But what else is she going to do?
Well, no, I agree that Lorelai needed to get the money from her parents, but Lorelai, at this point, barely even dates because she wants to keep Rory separate from that stuff. She certainly wasn't going to do anything gross.
So there is an idea that I have that when I watch this show, I like to think about a separate universe, like another life Lorelai has had or is having simultaneously, where she's the character in Bad Santa, and she's banging Billy Bob Thornton in the Santa outfit. So when I see Lorelai, I just think, fuck me Santa, fuck me Santa, fuck me Santa. So how do you feel about that?
Well, I was familiar with Lorelai before I was familiar with the character in Bad Santa. And for me, it was difficult to accept that character. I think anytime I see Lauren Graham, she's always going to be Lorelai to me. Less so with the girl that plays Rory. I've seen her in other things, and I can kind of accept that.
That's right, because Rory is in The Handmaid's Tale.
Yes, and she's been in other things too.
I don't remember from anything else, but it's weird to see them in other things. So Rory doesn't want to go to the fancy new school because she needs some of that Dean Winchester dick. You know, she doesn't want to go. But Lorelai's freaking out.
Well, Rory doesn't know what Lorelai did to get her tuition.
Oh, that's right. Because they go to the dinner and it's really awkward. Like Grandpa falls asleep and Lorelai gets into a fight with the parents.
Richard is just generally kind of a dick to Lorelai.
All the time, or just
in this episode especially. Like, he says some mean-ish things, offhand mean like rich people do. And Lorelai freaks out, goes into the kitchen. Emily finally follows her, and then this fight ensues, and it's during the fight that Rory overhears that they are doing the dinners to get her tuition money. She realizes what Lorelai has done and understands that... the sacrifice that Lorelai is making, because she knows how Lorelai feels about her parents.
So would you say Lorelai's a bigger whore for this, or with popping $20 hand jobs? She's still selling herself, just in a different way.
That's gross. She's gone to her parents for money to help her children's education. I don't think that that's exactly popping hand jobs.
Oh. So... I wrote down another reference that they were talking about. There was a Macy Gray song again because they got into a fight.
And they both put on the same CD.
They both listened to the same song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little heavy-handed, but cute.
Yeah. I mean, it was the pilot, so they really had to get that in there. And then the first dinner with the rich grandparents, Menendez reference is made. You know that?
Yeah. Menendez me. You can Menendez me after dinner.
So that's a reference to a brutal murder.
Yeah, those two guys that killed their parents because their dad
they were sad.
touched their butthole or something.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, like somebody's molesting somebody. I don't remember. That was long before 2000 though, wasn't it?
It was
like
in
95?
the 90s. It was in the 90s. I mean,
I
it was
feel
still
like that reference was dated
still,
even for then.
It was, so what I noticed, even though this show aired for the first time in 2000, there were a lot of 90s references. That's why I've been keeping track of them. It's like the writer has been writing this for years. Was it Amy Sherman Palladino? Was she the writer too?
Yeah, and I think it was kind of her pet project. The mythos has always been that she knew exactly how it was going to end. She had like the final.
She had the 4 words.
And then they didn't get to the 4 words until the end of the reboot because eventually Amy Sherman Palladino gets pitched out.
Because you said like the 7th season sucks ass.
The entire 7th season can go fuck itself.
But she wasn't involved in it.
Right.
So she didn't get to do the final 4 words, which she does in the reboot.
Right.
Which I'm not going to spoil. I know what it is. Go watch the reboot if you want to know, or don't. I don't give a shit. So I'm gonna keep track of the maids because apparently Emily Gilmore goes through maids like underwear.
Oh yeah, like every episode there's a new maid.
Every episode there's a new maid. So there's an old blonde maid in this one.
Does it give her name?
There was no name. I kept track. I was gonna try to keep track of the names too, but it was just some.
Some of them have names.
Some hard-looking blonde gal didn't take no shit.
Which is probably why she isn't around much.
Which probably wasn't why she. Yeah.
Emily Gilmore is excellent at dishing out the shit.
Half-ass Susan Sarandon is a cold bitch.
Well, and I've heard that the actress that plays her really hates that character. That she was surprised that the character is as sympathetic as she becomes.
So not only, so she plays her like an asshole because she hates that character.
She really reads that character as an asshole. She doesn't feel the sympathy toward that character that a lot of people do.
So she doesn't like it. So she was like, "Well, I need to be unlikable."
Right, like she doesn't read that character as charitably as some people do, especially in the reboot. I mean, as a grieving widow, she's much more sympathetic. But
I enjoyed
the woman
her.
that plays Emily Gilmore still said that she didn't
I enjoyed that character a lot more in the reboot, and I don't know if it's because she's grieving or she's more of a warm grandmother role in that. I don't know.
Well, the character does develop. I mean, you've
True.
seen one episode and bits and pieces of other parts.
And so apparently old Dick Gilmore has got all his money from insurance. They don't say what he does, but he's in the insurance business.
Right, they're rich, but they're not like Microsoft rich.
No, like they've got a fucking mansion, but they're not like Bill Gates. But
Right, exactly.
rich enough to drop $5,000 on a shitty grandkid's tuition.
Rory is not a shitty grandkid.
I'm sure she is.
Oh my
she's
God.
never around. She's only around for Christmas to get the good presents. But
I don't think that they would give good presents.
you don't think so? You think it'd be shitty? You think it would be like gift cards or like?
No, I think it would be like expensive stuff that she doesn't really like.
Yeah.
Like because they don't know her.
Yeah. Kind of like gifts from I don't know what's a hot I don't know sweatshirt company right now.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not hip.
Okay. So then we find out old Dick Gilmore brings up Lorelai's ex, Rory's dad, Christopher.
Yes.
Oh, and he's trying to say like how awesome he's doing out in California.
Yeah, California.
So we do find out, that is a digging point that old Dick uses against Lorelai that causes the tiff. And I wrote proud Lorelai here for some reason.
Well, she stands up for herself.
Yeah.
And then she goes into the kitchen just to get away from it. I think that avoidance is the way that she's dealt with her parents for a long time. Even when she was living there, I think that she tried to stay away from them. And she always, she's made her life very much about being self-sufficient. Not needing them, not wanting anything from them. So, that reinforces how hard it was to go to them for money for Rory's school.
Gotcha. So then dinner's all done. They're sad, so then they go to Luke. I haven't brought up Luke.
Luke!
Luke is going to be very important. He's the owner of Luke's Good Foods and Hardware store.
His father owned the hardware store, and after his father died, Luke made it into the diner. He keeps some of the hardware stuff around as like an homage to his father, but he doesn't sell hardware.
So you kind of see him in the beginning. He's kind of dirty and grumpy because he's
not dirty. He's just grumpy.
Lorelai thinks he's dirty.
He's unkempt.
He's unkempt. Small business owner. And this bitch Lorelai that goes in there begging for coffee all the time is like, scuzzy.
You realize she pays for her coffee, right?
She pays for it, I'm sure. And so they go in for some post-bad dinner with Grandma and Grandpa for some coffee and cheese fries is what Rory orders.
Yeah,
chili cheese fries
or something.
And Luke's all cleaned up and Lorelai's, "What's up, dude? Give me a slice of that hot dick." That's what's going on.
No?
I think so. It's gonna happen eventually. She's into what Luke's got to offer.
I think she sees that he cleans up nice. So
So you don't think she was in it to win it from the beginning?
I don't know when I don't know. I think there was probably some underlying sexual tension before, but it doesn't really become a thing until after the show's pretty well established, I think.
So I wrote there's a Nick at Night reference, so there's another 90s reference if you're keeping track. I didn't go into too much detail there. And then we see Amy Sherman Palladino is the writer there at the end. Check out her other show, like I said, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I think I'm going to call it good for this first episode. One down and 152 more to go. You say I have to watch all the new ones too, which are like an hour and a half.
Yeah, they're each an hour and a half.
Sounds like some bullshit. I don't know how far I'm going to make it. Tune in next time to see if I quit or not. This has been Randy Delp and my wife.
Nikki Delp.
And this is Delpy Does the Gilmore Girls.